In this video, we're going to take a look at the Yeedi Cube, and this robot vacuum is almost perfect. You can see it's outlined my kitchen cabinets. But then all of a sudden, what the heck? Is this vacuum trying to gaslight me? I said almost. Welcome back to SlackerLabs. My name is Jeff. Yeedi did send me the Yeedi Cube in exchange for a video showing it off to you, but they're not influencing my opinion on this device, as I'm sure will be evident if you stick with me. And actually, I'm on my second Yeedi Cube because the first one had some issues, some of which were rectified by a new unit, which we're going to talk about. I have reviewed Yeedi vacuums in the past, so I was curious if this one improved on their design, especially in terms of integrating with Home Assistant. We'll talk more about the Home Assistant integration options in a bit. But first, let me show you the hardware. The Yeedi Cube is a self-emptying vacuum and mop cleaner, and it was built with automating the boring stuff in mind, because it also cleans itself after it cleans your floor. The name is in no doubt a reference to the shape of its base station, although isn't a cube supposed to have equal sides? Anyway, what's important is this base station contains some of its key features. It has a 1.2 liter water reservoir for collecting dirty water with a design that makes it easy to see at a glance how full it is, and a dust bag that can hold 2.1 liters of dirt, pet hair, cereal, and other filth that lands on your floor. When we flip it over on its back, we can see the robot docking port, and one of the things I really like about this design. This is a built-in e-scrubber, and its purpose is to clean the mop head when the robot returns. This does do a pretty good job, which we will see in a bit. But the idea is this slides back and forth with enough force to scrub the mop head to clean it. And this station has 27,000 pascals of sucking power to empty the vacuum. Bonus points if you understand that reference. After that, we have the vacuum itself. It comes with a microfiber mop cloth, a plug for the water tank on top, which I'm not sure why it was separate, 2 color-coded edge brushes, and some papers that could have been electronic. This robot is pretty thick, so getting under some objects is going to be a challenge. It has a dustbin that can hold 360 milliliters of dirt, and on paper, this vacuum has 4,300 pascals of vacuum power. As you can see, it doesn't have a LiDAR turret on top, meaning its navigation is done using what Yeedi calls visual and laser navigation. There's a nice rubber handle on top that makes removing the water tank pretty easy, and this tank can hold 1 liter of clean water. And that handle can also be used to pick up and carry the robot to a location to clean, which could come in handy if you have multiple floors you want to use this robot on. Underneath, it's equipped with some monster truck wheels and a plastic guard that I suspect you could leave on if you're just going to use it as a vacuum. Since I'm using it as a mop, I replaced it with the microfiber cloth. To do that, you just have to fight with the Velcro on the plastic one and then slide it out and then slide the new one on. And that brings us to the next feature I think makes this vacuum stand out. On the robot, it has a small section under the cloth that slides back and forth at 2,500 times a minute. Yeedi calls this a Sonic Mop Head, and I think it could be a better design than the rotating mop heads. Again, I'm no mop expert, but I do like that as the vacuum is moving forward, this is scrubbing perpendicular to that motion. In any case, once I had the edge brushes installed, it was time to get this set up. My first floor is a pretty open floor plan, so I found a place next to the popcorn machine to put the base station. The base station does make a lot of noise when emptying the vacuum, so you're going to want it away from the main areas. The first part is adding this little tray that collects water and helps raise the robot up so the electronic scrubber can get underneath it. After that, I added the little plastic grip that helps the vacuum get into place. To get it added to the Yeedi app, just flip on the switch on the side and then you can open up the Yeedi app to finish the setup. We need to hold down a couple of buttons until we hear the voice prompt. Then we connect it to the Wi-Fi, name it. Firmware updates are always a good decision. And when all of that's done, you'll be greeted by your new cleaning droid. As I think I've already said, I'm not a vacuum tester. I prefer to test these things as a normal human would use them, which means seeing how well this works as if you were running this vacuum for the first time in your home. And because I personally live with pets and a kid, the floors are pretty messy. As I mentioned, I did get a replacement Yeedi Cube, and while the first one had some issues, the second one did much better on the initial run.
Start cleaning.
I'm running the vacuum with carpet boost mode on, which really does make a difference in performance if you have a mix of carpet and non-carpet areas. I have all hardwood in the common areas, with just rugs here and there, and the vacuum did a pretty good job. It does have some quirks with the mapping, which is going to probably lead to some distrust. For example, on this mopping run, I pulled up the app to check its progress. You can see it's outlined my kitchen cabinets. But then all of a sudden, what the heck? Is this vacuum trying to gaslight me? The team at Yeedi tells me that this is not indicative of a flaw and that the vacuum will cover all of the space even if it's marked it as complete in the app. And I can confirm that what the map shows isn't what the robot has cleaned, which is where I think that distrust is going to come from. But it should cover the entire floor regardless of this map. Although, when we get to the mop, you'll see that's not entirely true. But the vacuum does do a good job overall. It didn't get everything off my rugs, but to be fair, neither do any of my other vacuums. If this vacuum ran every day, then I suspect it will get pretty close. It got the clumps of pet hair that congregate along the walls, and even the dry mud my kid tracked in and left on the doormat. When it got back to the dock, it appears to need quite a bit of runway in front of it in order to get up into the dock. So keep that in mind when looking for a place to put the base station. Shortly after it docked, the base station kicked on its suckage to clean the vacuum's dustbin. The first vacuum I tested didn't do well at this stage, but the second one did much better. And based on the amount of stuff in the bin on the first one, I think there is a point in which the vacuum can get too full and the base station's going to have a problem, which may mean that this vacuum was made for people that keep their floors pretty clean and just need a little effort out of their vacuum. I wonder how those people live. In any case, I'm not sure what caused that first failure, but since then, the vacuum has emptied every time. So let's talk about mopping. For the next part, I decided to limit the test to just the kitchen, and before going on this run, I filled up the water tank. The previous unit seemed to have a mopping problem. So this time, when I filled the tank, I marked the level with a dry erase marker for reference. It's important to note that Quick Clean will not mop your floor even if you have selected room-based cleaning and told it to both vacuum and mop the space. So you're going to want full clean when you want to mop. I was a little worried since on the previous unit it acted as if it didn't know my kitchen cabinets were there, which made sense because the map shows it as open space. The Yeedi Cube only marks the outer walls of the space and doesn't mark interior obstacles. And this does worry me a bit, mainly because I'm used to robot vacuums, including previous Yeedi vacuums, being able to accurately show the interior space. And the mopping started off really well. Good water coverage and the floor was looking really good. Even with the Sonic Mop Head, this mop isn't built to get set in stains, but I have noticed that if you spritz those spots with some water a few minutes prior to running your vacuum, it does a pretty decent job. One of the coolest features is that the mop head automatically lifts about 8 millimeters, so it doesn't get your carpet or rugs wet, meaning that it can easily handle a space with rugs and hardwood. 8 millimeters isn't going to save your high pile carpet, but for rugs and low pile carpet, you should be good. It does have some issues getting the mop head close to the edge of the floor along the wall, but I think this is a design flaw with most robot vacuums and not an issue unique to the Yeedi Cube. The mop head simply doesn't extend out to the same edge as the sensors on the side. And to be completely honest, the first unit I tested only mopped half of the kitchen before appearing to no longer get the floor wet. And according to Yeedi, this was most likely due to the proximity of the rug in this space, since the vacuum is going to try and keep your rug dry. But on this second unit, it continued mopping the floor and covering the space the previous one didn't. I did notice that this new vacuum had an issue at this point, where it acted as if it had come up to an obstacle, turned around, and then completely skipped a section of my floor. It never came back to mop this space. And since the app doesn't accurately report obstacles in the interior space or report where it has mopped in real time, I don't have any idea of what happened here. A bit later, it does appear to run out of water though. As you can see, the floor under the mop head here is no longer completely wet. There are lines where it's dry. This vacuum does have the ability to set the amount of time it will mop before returning to clean the mop head. And in this run, I set it to 10 minutes to see if that would make a difference. So shortly after I noticed it was struggling to get good water coverage, it returned to the station to clean the mop head. And when it resumed, you can see the water coverage is good again. Although here's a small section it missed, and it never came back to finish this one either. So based on my experience, it appears that the mop is pretty decent, but it isn't going to be perfect. And it appears to only get water on the mop head when it's at the station. When it returns to the docking station, the self-cleaning takes over. As soon as the vacuum has docked, which is again quite loud, it cleans the mop head, which is good, because this is what it looked like after a mopping run. And then it dries the mop head. The drying time can be either 3 hours or 6 hours. I just left it on the default 3 hours. The dryer should get up to 104 degrees. The highest I saw was 90, so I suspect it hits that temp towards the end of its drying time period. The e-scrubber does a pretty decent job cleaning the mop head, and what it didn't get off typically has come off with just a rinse and some water. And if you recall from when I filled it up, the water was up to here, and now after mopping 200 square feet, it's now here. Still, not what I expected with the water use set to high, but better than the first one I tested. On paper, this vacuum looks really good, and based on what it picked up off my floors, I would say this vacuum has enough power to clean your floors. The self-cleaning feature does work pretty well, although if your floor is too dirty, it may not perform as expected, because there does appear to be a chance that the dustbin can get too full for the base station to empty the vacuum. Battery life is good as well, and it recharges really fast, and the auto-raising mop head did keep my rugs dry, which is a really nice feature I haven't seen in other vacuum mop combos that I've used. Again, I didn't stage test, because I doubt that's how you're going to use this vacuum. And I think the Sonic Mop Head, as Yeedi calls it, does a better job than not having that feature, because even though it's not meant to get set-in stains, it did get the set-in stains I pre-soaked for a minute or two. But overall, I'm not sure the mop feature is going to be something you're going to want to rely on. Although if you do break up your space into small areas that can be cleaned in less than 10 minutes, it may do a pretty good job, because it does appear there is a point in runtime when the mop head is not going to be very effective anymore, and returning to clean the mop head seems to rectify that. So I would absolutely set the clean the mop head option to every 10 minutes. And finally, the mapping functionality. Yeedi tells me that despite the visual appearance in the app, this vacuum does correctly map the space. After showing footage of the mapping issues I had before, Yeedi told me that my original device had some issues, which is why I have this second one, and I can say that the second device has never once tried to get into the space occupied by my kitchen cabinets like the first one did. But this is a $700 device, and it's clear that it doesn't always cover the entire floor, although those areas that it missed were pretty small. But whether that's a sensor issue or a mapping issue, I don't know. But I really think the mapping is the biggest flaw with this vacuum, and hopefully it can be fixed with a firmware update or even an app update. Because I think most people that look at this app are going to question the accuracy of the mapping ability, because it appears to be marking where it's been, and then it goes and does something like this. So I'm not sure what they've done here, but I think it's a miss. And once again, we have no way to integrate this vacuum directly with Home Assistant. The only smart home platforms listed for inclusion are Amazon and Google, neither of which I would really consider smart home platforms. As with my previous Yeedi, you could use the Amazon skill and leverage it as a bridge, which would give you the ability to automate starting this vacuum. And with all of that, based on my time with this vacuum, if you have an open floor plan, I think I would skip this one. It does appear to be able to understand doorways and can accurately mark rooms based on that, but its ability to break up areas based on other interior features appears to be non-existent. And this map doesn't give you a lot of interior landmarks to help you manually break up those spaces. And of course, if you wanted to integrate this vacuum with Home Assistant, there are better options out there. If you need a robot vacuum that automates that boring cleaning and emptying side of owning a cleaning droid, and your house has smaller common spaces, or at least built-in doorways to help designate rooms, I think this would be a pretty decent vacuum and mop combo. Although be prepared to spend some time dialing in those settings to make sure it can mop and vacuum your spaces effectively. This vacuum is unable to tell by itself when it needs to empty the dustbin or know when the mop head is out of water. It's got some nice features, and with more intelligent mapping, it would most likely become a pretty solid vacuum for anyone. But I also know that ultimately, my single opinion doesn't matter. So before you decide one way or the other, check out some of the other reviews out there. Strangely enough, they all seem to be glowing reviews, which makes me wonder about quite a few things actually. In any case, that's all I have for this one. There's a link to the vacuum in the description of this video so you can check it out in more detail. But I'll leave the decision of whether it automates enough of your boring stuff to earn a place in your smart home with you.